Hello, and I'm delighted to welcome Martin James Bartlett to this interview. Martin is the BBC Young Musician winner in 2014, currently studies with Vanessa Latarche at the Royal College of Music. Delighted to have you here, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, it's a pleasure. And it will be, I think, an exciting talk. And let's start from the beginning, from your childhood. I mean, you're still very, very young, but how did you get into playing the piano?
Well, I think my first introduction to the piano was probably when I was in the womb, because my mother used to play it in music assemblies, but she's a school teacher. So I heard all of these, nursery rhymes and things from a very young age. So I wouldn't say I came out singing and dancing, but I think from a young age, I was sort of drawn to the piano, and we had some pianist students in the house. So it was a sound that I was very accustomed to, and it sort of seemed a natural progression that I would eventually start playing. So my mum, first of all, she was my teacher. And then I moved on at the age of 7 to the Royal College of Music, which I've been there ever since. So that is 16 years in that building. And it's wonderful, though. It's been a great joy of mine to spend such a long time and get to know an institution so well. And also, I also went to the Purcell School and studied with Emily Jeffrey, who was a big influence on me. She was the teacher I was studying with throughout BBC Young Musician. And now I'm at the senior college with Vanessa Latarche. I've completed my undergraduate, and I'm now finishing my last year of masters. So.
Oh, exciting. So how does it really feel to be at the RCM for such a long time? I mean, do you feel that it's just somewhere you really belong to, or why such a commitment?
I mean, I think first of all, I chose to study there because I loved the biscuits so much. I went on an open day, and I know that when I went to the Guildhall, they had a sort of a plain biscuit, and the college had bourbon biscuits, the chocolatey biscuits filled with chocolate cream.
That's it.
And from that point, I knew that this was the place for me. So I've loved it. I've really grown with the place, and it's always been a wonderful base for me to come back to every time. And in the last few years, I've been lucky to do quite a few concerts, and it's always a real pleasure to have a sort of homely feel and come back and see all the people I love. So.
Here is the advice for everyone: choose wisely, choose the biscuits you really like, and you will be happy in life.
You must.
Let's get back to your young years and your technique. And so, did you have any troubles developing your piano technique?
Well, I think actually, my teacher, Emily Jeffrey, she always put sort of the music beyond the technique. It was always, for most technical issues, there is a musical solution. And I think it was when I didn't think of the music and I felt strongly about the technical issue that it was demanding and I couldn't do it, then I ran into problems. If I phrased something and if I understood what every note meant and how to sort of string them together, I then found it far more simpler. So that's something I sort of still think about now. As soon as I find a challenging passage, I try and find the music underneath, and it gives me a bit more structure.
That's a good tip. And of course, one still has to play etudes and scales and everything. Were you very fond of those?
I never had a fondness towards them. Scales, I did some. I did them for the exams, but I very rarely play scales anymore. It's something that I've had such a bulk of repertoire to learn in the last few years that I feel that any sort of minute that I sit down that I'm not actually actively investigating the scores that I'm playing is sort of, I feel very bad about it. Therefore, I haven't done many technical exercises lately, but that's because I've been trying to learn, Brahms piano quintets and all kinds of things. And so I yes, they are important, I'm sure, but sadly, I haven't done them that much recently. So,
but let's come back when you were, let's say, a teenager. I mean, have you ever invested really hours into etudes or trying to, let's say, play Chopin etudes or Liszt etudes?
I did. I mean, when I was very young, I spent a lot of time with Czerny. you know, and it's still the pieces that still stay with me today from the School of Velocity that I still remember, because I really love playing them. You know, they're such quirky little pieces, and I was very intimidated by the Chopin etudes, partly because from a sort of at a young age, I never felt a great affinity between my style and Chopin's music. I felt like it was something that didn't fit with me.
Really?
Yeah, and that carried on for quite a while, actually, and even now I very rarely play Chopin, and I adore Chopin. I love listening to it, but it's not something that it's not something I wanted to feature on my first album, or on my second album. It's something that I feel I would like some more time with. I think it's something that's very easy to hackney, you know, because it's so expressive, it's so emotive. It seems something that could be very easily overdone or underdone. So it's something that I still am working at.
Amazing. But it's very interesting, actually. I think also for a musician of, let's say, who is young, it's important to, of course, cover different styles of music. So is your repertoire covering loads of epochs, or just, let's say, romantic repertoire?
No, it's very varied. I think I adore Bach and Rameau and all of these sort of early pioneers of the instrument. And then I do have a great fondness for Liszt. I must say, I love his transcriptions. And it was very funny. It was through sort of Liszt that I found Schumann in a very strange way, through Widmung. And then I found the song, and I adore Chopin, and don't play it so much, but I adore it. And the Rachmaninoff, of course, too, which was when I won BBC Young Musician with the Paganini variations, was my first foray into a Rachmaninoff concerto, and I felt like it was such a wonderful way to start. It's sort of so, the witticism and the joy in it, I found really exciting to explore. So I tried to sort of scope all of the repertoire, and modern music, and Philip Glass and Samuel Barber. I really tried to cover all areas because I find it so fascinating.
Excellent. And let's talk about that competitions, because it of course has been a huge success, but you have been a winner of the keyboard finals, right? So you clearly kind of got somewhere, and then you stopped, and that didn't stop you actually to go further. That's very interesting psychologically, I think. How did you feel about entering again and again?
Well, it stopped. So I had first entered in 2012, and I got through to the, as you say, the keyboard finals, which I was delighted by. I didn't expect it to happen, and it was a real joy. I enjoyed every minute of it. Everyone was so very kind, from the backstage crew to the hair and makeup and every kind of thing, you know, because it's such a televised competition. You know, it has so many other elements that you don't find in Tchaikovsky or things like this. So, but all of that I found a real joy, and I was very disheartened when I found out that I hadn't continued on that journey that time. And I did say that I wouldn't do it again, and I made my mind up that I wasn't going to do it again, and I wasn't bitter about it, but I just decided that it probably was not for me. But my teacher actually convinced me. You know, as the time came round again, I could feel this fire inside me that I wanted to do it again, because I felt like I had developed. I had an entirely different new repertoire, and I was really starting to go for it. But I didn't think I could be the one to say that I wanted to do it again, because I'd been so adamant. And she'd always said, "No, keep your options open. You never know." And actually, she turned around and said, "You want to do it?" And I said, "I think I have to do it, because I have a really good feeling about it." And I'm very glad I did, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's great. But were you nervous, let's say, or were your family nervous about entering the second time?
I can't say I was. I was very excited. I knew what I was up against. You know, the first time I had no idea. I didn't know the pressures that I would be under, and it did come slightly as a wake-up call. But the second time, I knew how early on I had to get on top of the repertoire, because, you know, it's one thing playing a concerto with your local orchestra. It's another thing playing it with the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra in the Usher Hall live on BBC television, you know, and every mistake can possibly go wrong because the nerves is so much higher. So I had spent a ridiculous amount of time preparing. So I felt very confident in myself that I would give something, but of course, I had no idea what I was up against competition-wise, but I was really just enjoying it.
Mm. So you mentioned a huge preparation. So tell me a little bit about this preparation. How many hours, how many sort of run-throughs before did you have?
Well, I first, yes, before I did the piano finals, which is the solo round, I entered myself into a few other competitions, you know, just to get the idea of the exposure of how it would feel. And I entered, I think it was Woking Young Musician of the Year. And I played my BBC Young Musician programme and I didn't get placed. I was in the top 3. And
I love this.
I thought,
I love this.
I have the competition in 2 weeks' time and I haven't even been placed.
Amazing.
In this local competition, and I now have to do it nationwide. So I worked very, very hard after that. And also I played the Rachmaninoff Paganini variations 1 or 2 times. I did it in the junior department of the Royal College. I did it as their concerto, and I had had a performance of it before. So, but as I say, it's a whole new level. You know, I felt I prepared it to a very high level, and I took it to my teacher who had been a little ill before, so I hadn't seen her so much. I took it to her sort of the week before, and I sat down and she said, this is not right. You know, it's very exciting, it's very fiery, but it's just, there's so many levels missing. And that was a big wake-up call. And from then on, I just, you know, I practiced that piece maybe 8 hours a day.
But that is, let's say we're talking a week before competition or 2 weeks before competition, like literally, or
probably 5 days or
wow.
so.
So you had someone saying 5 days before your final performance that there are basically layers missing and it's not quite right.
Yeah, but she was right, and she knew that's what, and that would what she would need to say to take for me to work. You know, because if she turned around and said, "Oh, it's okay," you know, I would have just slacked off, and therefore she needed to pinpoint everything that was missing and colours. And you know, there are so many moments when you play with an orchestra and you don't quite realise if you're rushing or if you're slightly ahead or behind, and it was all these minute things that she knew she had to put into my head, because I'm someone who I really work best when I'm under quite a considerable amount of pressure. And I practiced we were away, we weren't at home, but I practiced, you know, I was up at 8 a.m. and I left at about 10 or 11 at night for the next week until it was ingrained in me. And I wouldn't have done that unless she had been hard on me. And yeah.
Yeah, sure. And your parents must have been, of course, really supportive. I mean, I think if I were a mum, I would really, really worried about someone practicing that long, just before the finals. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, you know, I'm less aggro and a nuisance when I'm in a practice room. So I feel like my parents are probably quite grateful that I've been locked away for a little while so they could go and explore the town. No, yes, I'm sure they were worried. But I think they had belief in me and my teacher, because we've been together, you know, by this point, I've been with my teacher for 10 years.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's just really something I spotted. You said your parents could explore the town. So you were somewhere, presumably on holidays or something, or?
No, we were, because everything was done with the BBC, you know, everything takes a very long time to do. So therefore, we had gone up to Glasgow. The finals were in Edinburgh. We'd gone up to Glasgow about 5 days before. Okay. And we had to stay in Glasgow for a few days and then travel to Edinburgh. And then it was wonderful. I've never had such a luxury of so many rehearsals. I had a keyboard and conductor rehearsal. And then I think I had 3 full rehearsals on the piece with the orchestra for an hour. And then the day before we had a sound check that was an hour too. So I had nearly 4 hours of rehearsal time, which was, I've never had that luxury again. You know, 1 hour is now a big luxury.
So it's fair to say that you were already pretty exhausted by the time of the finals, and the only thing you wanted is really to play. So there were kind of no nerves coming in, really.
I didn't feel nervous at all. I had one moment where I was backstage, and I've now got this element out of me. But there's a bit at the end of the Paganini variations that goes da 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 da. So interlocking hands.
Yes.
I've played this a million times, and I was about to go on stage, and I thought, you know, I'll just check it. And I went to the upright piano, and I played it, and I couldn't fit the hands in between each other. And I walked downstairs, and I thought, well, I'm just about to go on stage and play this live for the TV, for the audience, for the judges, and I can't actually. No, I don't know whether I can play that bit or whether my brain has just forgotten it. And I think it was that element of incredible fear that I felt, that my brain sort of just, it cut everything off. It just went whew, when you're not thinking about anything. And I went out and I played, and I didn't think, and I didn't feel, and I didn't remember anything when I came on stage. I didn't really remember how I got from the opening note to the end note, and it was dreadful. I mean, it's very, I don't know why I'm telling you this is a very bad story, but at the beginning of the piece I play the first A unison octave, I play the second A unison octave, and my left hand just slightly touches the B natural above the A. And at that moment I thought, God, if you can't play, you know, stationary octaves, this does not bode well. So
Actually, I'm going to tell you a very funny story, and it has to do with also a competition. So I won the Tchaikovsky musicians for junior musicians, actually, back. And in the final, I played Rachmaninoff's second concerto. And as you know, in the beginning, you can't really play hear the pianist, because the orchestra comes at such such a force there. So I actually forgot the second bar. So I've started with the C at the base, and then I went, my mind went blank, and I said, well, certainly, like, there's no point of anything like continuing. And of course, my nerves stopped, my brain stopped, and I just enjoyed the whole thing. And of course, the funny thing is that no one heard. I mean, you can't even hear it, you can't see it, you can't see anything in this kind of couple of bars. So I was already thinking, just let's enjoy it, because I can't do anything about it. So that was a very fun, and you see, and it also resulted in winning. So I think these kind of things at the beginning, when they can put your nerves at ease in a way.
I think it does. I think it either makes you sort of switch off, or it makes you fight so much, because you know that this is not an accurate representation of what you can do. And I think for me, I thought after this moment, I thought, well, you know, I need to stop thinking about all the technical issues and all of this stuff, and I just need to play this piece as I love it. And that's what I hope I did. And I came off stage, and as I said, I had no recollection of what had happened. I had to come up to my teacher. I said, did I have any memory slips? Was there any problem? Because I can't remember anything.
Wow. Yeah.
But now I've seen it again, so the memories all come back.
Yeah, sure. But how are you with your memory? Are you a quick learner?
Yeah, I realized when I was younger, the reason I used to have memory slips was because I never quite understood the harmony, or I never quite understood. I never used to, you know, sort of like in a Mozart sonata, I never used to think of intervals, and in the development, of what interval it changes for it to move into a different part. I never used to think of that. I just used to do it by feel. And I found that when I did it by feel, if I got confused, I couldn't feel my way out of it. Whereas as I got older, you know, I really learned to put markers in, you know, that this interval is always, because when in the development or in a different key, the intervals are usually all the same, or it's a major third or something like that. And if one can work that out, I always found that something. So therefore, for a while, I actually haven't, touch wood, haven't had any memory slips. And the joy of, you know, with during these very, very difficult times is that one need never have a memory slip again, because one can re-record and re-record and re-record before they put it on Instagram. But no, my memory is okay, actually. It should be. I'm 23 years old.
Yeah.
If it's not good now, there's not much hope.
But let's talk about also how fast you can learn things like under pressure. I mean, it seems you're really performing well under pressure, as you said. So has there been a situation where you had a bet, or you needed to play something really quickly, learn something quickly?
Yes, when I was younger, I was terrible. As in, I would learn everything last minute, you know, and I would pull out music for a recital a few days before and try and learn it. And you know, it never ended disastrously, but there were some very, very close shaves. I remember once I had put myself in for a competition to play Ravel Piano Concerto, and I had forgotten entirely about it, that I put myself in for it. And the round that I had to do was on the Monday, and I remembered on the Friday, and I'd never learned Ravel Piano Concerto in my life. So I had 2 days to try and learn the whole of it, and I was just so insistent that I wasn't going to pull out of this competition. I put myself in for it, and it was something that I had to do. So I did learn it, and I could play it, you know, averagely. I played it with the score, but I managed to get my way through all 3 movements, which was a surprise. But I've learned now that, you know, it's one thing to play something, to get the notes, to even get some inflection and some interpretation, but to really feel something, it takes a very, very long time to actually do something that you feel true to.
What is your
So,
attitude to people who play with the scores?
I think it's very individual. I think there are moments where it's right to, of course, give some given chamber music situations. You know, for one of my favourite pianists is Richard Good, and of course he always plays with the score. And I feel for him, it's no issue. It doesn't affect his musicality. It doesn't affect his outpouring. For me, I find that I'm less distracted by the score when I'm playing off by heart. And I feel my best performances are done without the score on the piano. But it's sometimes, you know, with the volume of work one's given, it's sometimes an impossibility to learn something off by heart. You know, I did Britain's Young Apollo with Mirga and the CBSO, and I had so many concerts around this. I had done the Jeune Homme Mozart Concerto in Dublin 2 days before, and the day after I was giving 2 recitals in Germany, and it was such a build-up of things that I thought, this is something I'm going to have to use the score for. And actually I turned up and I said, I'll be using the score. And Mirga said, oh, well, I'm so glad of that, because it is a piece of chamber music, and I feel it's best in that way. And I said, well, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. So so sometimes, you know, one wishes that they can play without the score, but sometimes it's essential, really.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your albums. So you have recorded one, very exciting one, and then you mentioned you have something coming up as well.
Yes, the new album has been ever so slightly delayed, of course, because we haven't been able to meet up, and also it's a part orchestral disc and it's also a part solo disc. So I'm hoping to record the solo elements in the summer, which is a Gershwin and Rachmaninoff disc, and it will feature the Rachmaninoff Rhapsody on theme Paganini, coming back to that, which I will practice those interlocking passages, and Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. So it has 2 rhapsodies sort of bookending the album, and in the middle I found some really wonderful transcriptions by Earl Wild of Rachmaninoff songs and vocalese, and also some wonderful Gershwin Earl Wild. So The Man I Love, Fascinating Rhythm, I've Got Rhythm, Embraceable You. So it's sort of, and I'm really, really excited about it because I love all the music so much, and I love the concept of it. It feels something very comfortable to me. So yes, I'll hopefully record the solo things in the summer, the orchestral things at the beginning of next year, and then fingers crossed for a sort of a late spring release, or perhaps an early summer release. So we'll see.
But look, I mean, obviously, it's great to hear about this, especially now when there's so many projects cancelled and put on hold. So what do you think of the current situation?
Well, it's tragic in so many bigger ways than just the music element. You know, I feel very difficult because I'm devastated about the loss of live performances, and you know, the Royal Opera House was saying only the other day that it was in financial difficulty, and with current reserves couldn't look past the autumn with any degree of safety. And yeah, that's been very, very hard for me. It's been slightly more personal for me because my grandparents have both had to have tested positive for coronavirus, and they were
Oh,
quite ill at one point. But thankfully, they've got through it, and so far they're looking really healthy and well, and I'm so pleased for that. But sort of at the very beginning, I couldn't really comprehend even my loss of work, because it wasn't something that I was even. I mean, I got emails and emails a day from my agent saying this is cancelled and this is cancelled, but at the time I couldn't even think of it. And now, yes, it's terribly sad, and I feel very sorry for all the audiences and all the musicians. But I think if one positive thing can come out of it, I think it's that live music means so much to everyone. It's something so close to our heart, and we've been very lucky to have all of this wonderful archival things, such as old recordings of Horowitz and things I've been looking through, and rebroadcasts of opera. But I think there's nothing quite like the live performances, and for me, it's a huge relief and positive element to see that Germany is starting to open up, and concerts are seemingly starting to happen, and I hope, in a safe and measured way, the rest of the world, including the UK, will be able to follow suit, because I very much miss walking onto a stage.
yes, of course. But let's talk about what you're currently doing. So I really got the impression, and so you said that you need pressure to work. So there's no pressure at the moment. So what are you working on?
Yes, well, thankfully, a very dear friend of mine, Jonathan Bloxham, who's a conductor, his festival, which is titled Northern Chords, sadly was cancelled. But what he's done is he's found a donor and some sponsors who'll be willing to pay for some of us, the artists who were meant to appear, to record together. So that's some pressure, and it's wonderful. He could tell you far more about it than I can, because my memory is like a sieve when it comes to concepts. But I think there will be a few different concerts that we will pre-record and release. One will be focused around medicine, actually, and music composed alongside medicine, and composers who inhabit that. And also there'll be another one which is music composed when people have been in isolation and in quarantine. And there's a fun gala concert that I know I will be playing. I'm playing a scherzo movement of Beethoven sonata, and I'm playing a very fun version of Chopsticks by Borodin, and sort of very quirky things that I would never have had time to learn unless it were for this. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. I can't wait to do it. We're trying to find a studio where we can sort of social distance in the studio 2 meters apart, and still record and have a safe experience for everyone. But as soon as we get the green light, I think that will be something that we'll endeavour to set up as soon as possible.
Sounds really fun and exciting.
Thank you.
Of course. And what's your attitude towards the social media now? Is it important? Are you much on social media?
I've never felt a great allure of social media. I think it's something that, of course, over recent years has become more and more important to reaching a wider audience and promoting oneself. I haven't done much of it myself over quarantine, because I've just found it so flooded with concerts, that I can't sort of see past that. So I've played a few things, and actually somebody did message me the other day saying, why aren't you releasing more videos on your social media? And I do think that it's a wonderful thing, and I've been watching Angela Hewitt's, and I've seen yours, in fact, and played some Schubert, which was marvellous. But I think the important thing to remember is that we need to make sure it doesn't ever so slightly undermine our worth as musicians,
Sure.
and it's wonderful to give free recitals, and I agree, but we strive all of our life to sort of be recognised as a job that we should be paid for.
Yes.
And I've just found it with all of the influx of it, there's been so much, and it's been wonderful. I've just found it ever so slightly myself overwhelming. And I know I don't want to sound bitter and difficult, because I'm not. But it's something I've sort of been in two minds about. I've seen the joy it's brought to people. I've done something myself where I've been sending sort of personalised messages to people if it's their birthdays or wedding anniversaries, and play a piece that they would quite like, something like that, which is a bit more personal. but yeah, it's a hard one for me because I'm in so sort of two minds about the whole thing, really.
Yeah, well, I totally understand. In fact, I released a very small amount, and however, I did something that was called Music for the Mind, where I have like a newsletter and recorded some positive pieces, which I sent only to people who actually subscribed via email rather than sort of doing social media. But yes, it's very interesting because I think many young people consider this as a must, essential, sort of really essential thing for being a proper musician. So that younger, I stress it out because, of course, older pianists I've interviewed have a completely different feel to it.
Yes.
I know. Let's talk about your studies because you're, of course, still studying. What has been happening? What's exciting there, and how do you find the online teaching?
Well, I mean, I know for a fact that my teacher has been working unbelievably hard to keep the level of tuition and everyone engaged from, because all of the students from the RCM are scattered all about the world at the minute. So therefore we do have weekly classes, which have been very, very interesting. Vanessa Latarte has presented one on the Bach Well-Tempered Clavier. We've had some classes on Chopin, and also a few interview series with some famous musicians. So all in all, I found it very, very engaging. And as I've been away for concerts so much previously, I've barely spent much time in the last year or so at the college. And in a very strange way, I feel like I'm closer to the college now than I actually have been over the last year, because I get to see my colleagues and my peers and my professors actually sometimes more often than I would have normally. So I think it's been actually very engaging, and I know it's a struggle that all universities are finding, and with Cambridge putting some of their online, turning their lectures online until I think it was the summer of 21.
Yes, 21.
It's a very difficult time, especially for students who are paying fees, which are, very high fees, some of them, especially international students, to really wonder whether they're getting the worth from the institution. But from my perspective, I really engaged with all of the work that the college have done, and I think they're doing their best in a terribly demanding time.
And may I ask you, so of course you mentioned touring, it's very tiring, and I think you are a lot on your own. So when you were a teenager, did you know it would become like that? Did you expect this kind of lifestyle? Do you like it?
I think I love going to new places. And I know that I very rarely get to see those new places when one is touring, because you see the inside of a taxi and the inside of a hotel room. And if you're lucky, it's a nice hotel room. And if you're not, it's not. So in that sense, I don't mind traveling. I've always found, going through airports and things like this sort of thrilling. So therefore, I enjoy it, and I never feel that I'm away. And that's some of the reason that social media I hold sort of dearer to myself than other reasons, is that I can keep in touch with all of my friends and my colleagues. Over a period of time, I've been lucky enough to build up sort of friends in different cities, and it's nice. And if I go to Paris to give a recital, I know that there are some friends there who I haven't seen for a while, and I'll never be entirely alone. So I've managed to sort of cultivate a sense of wherever I am, there's some people who I'm fond of, who I can spend some time with. But also I've got very adept at sort of practicing one hand and texting with the other hand. So seriously? This is something.
Is this true?
I mean, it's a terrible thing to admit, but sometimes, if one's just practicing a few runs in a Mozart concerto, it is possible to book a table and reserve, and even scroll through the menu and find some things that you're interested in whilst doing that.
Oh wow! This would be a hit with our audiences of all ages. I tell you, this is Great. Never thought I would hear this, something like that from you, Martin.
I never thought I'd admit it. That's for sure.
I'm so glad. I think it's a true journalist spirit coming out from me, so I can get something out like this from you. Well, finally, let's take this aside. And what would be the advice for any of your colleagues who feel a little demotivated because of lack of concerts, and any younger pianists who are just aspiring to have this career, but there is no career possibility at the moment?
I would say look into what music means to you, and if it means something so much that you couldn't think of ever possibly doing something else, and you couldn't live a day without listening or reading or playing music or experiencing it in some way, then hold that dearly to yourself and do it for your own self, not for necessarily the audiences or things that we're all lacking at the minute, but just enjoy the music for yourself and playing it for yourself, because that's what I found. I'm practicing to an end goal, and this time I found that I've actually been able to sort of play for myself, and I've really enjoyed that. I know some of my friends who are finding it very difficult and are thinking of whether they should, have a career change and things like that. And I would never be so bold to say that, music is the career that everyone who has been a part of must continue to do forever. So I think it really is just individual preference. But I would say that the audiences will come back. The music, any art form, theatre, opera, it's so crucial to our human existence that there's no way that we will be able to do without it. So, and this is just this virus. It's sort of a very severe sort of flu that has way more repercussions than we would have ever thought it has. But we will beat it, and we will all be back together again in concert halls, whether it's sitting 2 meters apart for a while or things like that, or open air concerts. But I know that the music will always come through, and that's what I believe, and that helps me.
Yes, well, thank you. That was Martin James Bartlett, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of it, and all the best of luck with your career. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edith. Thank you.